Alright, everybody in their places. You guys ready on acid?
Ready on acid.
Ready in the blender?
Ready in the blender.
Tenfold. Go ahead and swap me the acid.
Let's get it fast. Hotel wake up call got me getting up.
Let's talk about some Fracsim meter basics. So the Fracsim meter, you can either get it with factory leads, and the type of leads available are the probe type leads. And if you want to use the meter like a multimeter, these are pretty much essential, because using the gator type leads, the other set of leads that are available, become cumbersome and kind of awkward for doing your basic measurements. Although if you did have another multimeter and you wanted to use the Fracsim as a supplementary tool only for simulating, then you'd be fine with these. You can still make measurements with it, but it's just a little more of a pain as compared to using the probe style leads. That's just a nice little probe there. You can make your own leads too, not a big deal. You just need to round up a couple of the PTO style connectors. So the way the leads work is these measure leads right here are always going to be hooked up to the same connector. You're always going to use these on the connector 1, the measure side, and they're always hooked up to the measure and ground. Now, every single measurement on the Fracsim is always done with those two leads, including current versus voltage. So you never have to worry about changing anything between your measurements. You just plug these in, and every measurement you make, it's going to work through these leads right here. Now, the other leads, the gator leads, right here, these can be used on either side, connector 1 or connector 2, and each one is actually double labeled. So for example, we got this one 45B or volts. So if you use the connector on this side, it's 45B. Use the connector on this side, it's going to be hooked up to the voltage sim. So these leads could be used on the other side. Sometimes when you're measuring, you do want gator leads, and if you don't have these handy things that fit on the end of your probes, then you can always just use these leads here, plug it in this side, use your ground and your measure pin. Keep in mind that the ground is common between the two. The ground is also common for the power supply, the measure, pretty much everything on the meter ground is common. So Fracsim meter, it's IP65 rated enclosure. Now to change the batteries, simply push in here and push in here, and the cover comes right off, and you see the gasket right there. Batteries come out just like that. There's a little pack there. You can actually use a 9-volt battery if you're desperate, but they don't last very long. Some guys use like these here, a nickel metal hydride rechargeable battery. You can just use regular alkalines. The older model 1 and 2 you could actually use lithium ion, like a 24-volt pack. The newer ones will not accept that. The maximum voltage recommended is about 9 volts, 9 or 10 volt battery pack. Put this back together here. When you're putting it back together, you should hear that snap, just so you know that it's good and sealed. So turning the meter on, pretty straightforward. The big on button beeps 3 times to let you know it's on. You got the percentage of the battery life remaining, that's approximate of course. Your internal temperature, the name of the meter, who it belongs to, firmware version, and then all the options over there of what you can do. Now when you're navigating the meter, everything you see on the screen, all those numbers there, are not these numbers here, they're always function numbers. So everything you see on the screen is always function numbers. So for example, if you wanted to go to simulate, you press F1. Pretty straightforward. And if you wanted to simulate current, press F1 again. And if you want to go back, there's this right here, there's a little red arrow, and you can use that to go back. As well, you can use home to go back. So if you hit anything in the red, you need to hit shift first. So shift home. So I'm going to go back in there again just to demonstrate shift is a latching. So if I hit shift once, anything I press now will be in the red. If I hit it again, it's not in the red. So if I hit 7 now, it's going to do a different function. It actually tries entering 7 in instead of going home. Again, if I hit it once and I press home, it will go back to home. When you're dealing with the Fracsim and you start to get more and more proficient with it, you might start to get it really quick. You got to be careful, because just because it beeps doesn't mean the entry was complete on the keypad. So I'm just going to demonstrate. I'm going to try entering in a value really quick, and you'll see that it can actually miss a character if you're going too fast. So I'm just going to try putting in a current of 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, well, it worked that time. I'm going to try something. Seems like it is pretty fast, but there are occasions when you can actually type stuff in too fast. So I hit 8 3 times there. It beeped 3 times, and you see it only entered 2 characters. So it is possible. I hit it 3 times and only beeped twice. You have to be going pretty quick. But just keep in mind to actually look at the screen to make sure it is doing exactly what you want before you hit enter. Some of the basic functions, for example, if you just wanted to measure voltage, easy enough. Now it seems a bit more complex than using, your traditional multimeter, but over time you actually can get very proficient at setting up the meter. For example, if I start with the meter off, I can actually very quickly get to measure voltage just because I've memorized. I know that it's 21. So I hit on 21. I can get to measure voltage very quickly. Actually quicker than that, than turning that dial most likely. And the fact that if I wanted to measure current, I don't have to change the leads on the meter. It's just going to be right there. And turning the meter off, it's just a little off button, right, or off in the red right there. So you hit shift off, beeps twice. Now the backlight. So there's a little button over here that says backlight. I'll just turn this off so we can demonstrate. So you press it once, it goes to minimal level. Press it again, it goes to full level. Now watch that battery voltage when you hit that top backlight level, how it just drops off like that. So again, battery voltage 31%, drops down to 30% with level 1, and then right down to 25 when it's cranked on. Turn it back on here. Some of this, let's go over some of the basic settings. So if you went into settings, there's some stuff in here. Auto power off. So auto power off is based on a timer on the keypad. So every time you press any button on here, except for on, anytime you press any button other than on, it'll reset the timer, and it's in minutes. So right now, if I don't touch, as of now, if I don't touch anything for 15 minutes, the meter will shut off. And you can adjust that. You just put in any value you want, and it retains an EEPROM memory. So hit F1 there, I can put in 5 minutes, and it'll stay at 5. You can turn the meter off and on, go back into settings, still at 5. Your wireless functionality, that's how you just turn it off and on there. It uses more battery power, so you turn it on when you're using it. 24 volts, you can turn that off and on for doing some of the more advanced functions. Your units, you can either go to metric or the standard type units. So right now we're at 28 degrees Celsius. I can go back to settings, change 4 to US units, and now it's in Fahrenheit. Then the units apply to this frequency sim when you go into K-factor mode, and in the RTD and thermocouple simulate and measure screens. Back into the settings, continuity level, and now when you're measuring resistance and you hit to audio beep mode, you can actually change the level at which the audio beep occurs, and you can change that anywhere from 0 to 0 to 254, I believe, or 0 to 250. You can also, if you're working in an environment you don't want to make a lot of noise, you can actually turn the buzzer off and on. The buzzer being that beep, of course. So you just hit F2, it'll go to off, and then now you can see that it doesn't beep in between the button presses anymore. Turn it back on. And you can also change the battery state of charge from on to off. And basically what that does is, if you remember when we first showed the screen there, it showed a percentage. If I turn that off, it's just going to show a battery voltage, 7.57 volts. And keep in mind that battery state of charge was set up for alkaline batteries. I'm using nickel metal hydrides, which are different, have a different curve and a different voltage level at a certain charge, so it's not as accurate. That SoC was specifically designed for using alkaline batteries. So I'm going to simulate some current out of the 741 equivalent and measure it on the Fracsim. Source, milliamps, 4 milliamps. Going to measure current to see if we can turn this. We can see a little better there. So you can see we got 4.000 there. When there's enough room, it does 3 decimals. When you get into 2 digits, I'll just do 12 milliamps. It actually shifts to only 2 decimals, but you can still see the full resolution value underneath. And just for fun, I'll show you how I've done the circuit protection. I got 24 volts on my power supply right now. I'm going to disconnect the flute because I do not want to damage that. And I'm just going to dead short. So 24 volts max current. I'm going to hook that up to current measure. So on a regular meter, you'd instantly pop it. Fracsim, that's fine. It just goes to pulse mode. And it's basically in pulse mode. It's opening and closing a measure relay so you don't overheat the resistor. And there's a polyfuse in there, so it's impossible for you to actually ever overload it, apart from actually hooking up to a voltage above 24 volts. And there is a bit of an engineering safety in there, so I'm actually going to take my power supply and crank it up. That's actually 32 volts right there. No problem. It'll sit there all day. And if I hook it back up to the 741, it'll go right back to our 12 milliamps, no problem. And you see on the measure screens there's a min and max. So to reset that, you see the reset says 4, F4, and it'll reset your min and your max in that corner there. And very similar, if you were to measure voltage, I'll just hook this up to I'll just hook this back up to the bench power supply here. We go to measure volts. See, it's maxed out there. Turn it down a bit. Well, approximately 24 volts, and you can see the same thing when there's a room for only 4 digits. It only shows 2 decimals, but down here you'll still see the full resolution value. Now there's averaging right there. So if you're trying to look for something really fast, you would turn your averaging off. But for most applications, you just use your just the averaging the way it is in on position, and you can also change the range. So if I turn down the, you're trying to measure something really low, you know, millivolt level, turn it down to that, and then hit your range, and it'll go to the millivolt range, and it's a lot more accurate in this mode here for the lower stuff. And as well, you got the reset command right there, so you can hit reset and just watch for a min and max if you were specifically looking for something that happened over a period of time. And pretty much all the measure functions are simple like that. Like I said, all the measure stuff is done through the measure leads here. If I have a quick ground resistor here. I've got a 250 ohm resistor here. I went to measure ohms. Same leads, same thing. Hit that across there and there. There you go. 245 ohms. You can press F1 get into the beep mode, and you just hold these together, and it's relatively quick, but it's not the fastest. And as well, that level you can set at the point at which it beeps at. It also, this screen also works for your, if I take beep mode off, this also works for the diode check as well. If I were to grab a diode, basically if you just hit it in the one direction, it'll say open. Yeah, let's just open that direction. Oh, there we go. So it shows you the voltage drop right there. Theoretical resistance, but that's kind of valueless. But it shows you the voltage. So you got 0.66 standard silicon diode. And if I reverse the polarity on it, it'll just say open because there's no current flow going through it. You know. So you can use this Fracsim is pretty much just a basic multimeter. The advantage, of course, you can use it like that, but if you wanted to, you can also simulate current, frequency, RTD, thermocouple, serial data, oscilloscope. It's pretty much everything you need in one tool. Those are pretty much some of the basic functions. Now I'm going to put on a bunch more videos of the more advanced stuff later on.